හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Wednesday, the 25th of October 2023. Agri-Tech. More lands to be allocated for the modernization of agriculture, reveals the President.
In a decade and a half, we have to get all our farmers to move into new products and to use modern technology.
Water formula. Water Board to roll out new tariff formula from January 2024.
After the August 2023 water tariff hike, there would not be another water tariff hike which will be put forth to Cabinet, but rather we are working on a cost recovery formula.
Israel-UN spat. UN Secretary General criticizes Israel over their attacks in Gaza. Israel responds by calling for the resignation of the UN Secretary General.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum.
When you say that these heinous attacks did not happen in a vacuum, you are tolerating terrorism.
Go for glory. More medals for Sri Lanka at the Asian Para Games.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to today's edition of AdaDerana's English News, First at 9. I'm Jonathan Benedict. Let's get into our news stories right away. Starting with our top story for the evening, President Ranil Wickremesinghe has asked engineers to actively participate in technological innovation and agricultural modernization initiatives to propel Sri Lanka towards a dynamic economy. President Ranil Wickremesinghe outlined these plans for modernizing the Agriculture Ministry at the 117th anniversary of the Institution of Engineers. He also observed that about 1 million acres will be available in the country for use in modern agriculture and plantation projects under the Mahaweli Authority. President Ranil Wickremesinghe, addressing the 117th anniversary of the Institution of Engineers held today, outlined plans for modernizing the agriculture sector in the country. He also emphasized the need to develop the technology and green economic concepts of the country to be competitive in the future on a global level.
The debt restructuring process is going on, and once we achieve debt sustainability, we have to think of a new economy, which will give us a surplus of foreign exchange. The other area is a green economy, transition to renewable energies. So you can already see our potential for solar energy, and it's not only solar energy, I think we have potential for green hydrogen exports. Most countries' potential for green hydrogen far exceeds ours, but our requirements are small. Therefore, we will have surplus capacity for exports. That puts us in a special position. I know you all are talking in terms of 40 to 60 gigawatts. Whatever it be, we can end up by exporting green hydrogen in the next 2 decades. The next question is, how do we turn out more and more engineers? We must estimate our need and multiply it by 2, because you can be sure that half of them will go abroad. We have to think in terms of the engineers, the technical people, and those with vocational engineering skills. At the same time, there's another area also, that is agricultural modernization. That is where we have to be. We must ensure that we are competitive in agricultural products, and also that we can improve our productivity. If you look at our output in regard to rice, how much are we producing per hectare? We should have not even 4 metric tons. Australia with a similar climate produces 10. If we can just get to 7 or 8, we'll have surplus rice to export. Because by mid-century, the population from Saudi Arabia to Indonesia, or you can say from South Africa to Indonesia, will increase. Who feeds them? Who gives them food? Within a decade and a half, we have to get all our farmers to move into new products and to use modern technology. We have also found new land. I think Mahaweli still has about 200,000 acres to be opened. Then if you are modernizing the plantations, there's about 300,000 acres there to 400,000 acres. Another group to help are the tea smallholders. So like that, we will have about 700,000 to 1 million acres where we can start our modernization in agriculture.
Chinese research vessel Xi'an 6 arrived at the port of Colombo this evening. On the 9th of October, Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Counsel Ali Sabri confirmed that his ministry granted approval for the arrival of the Chinese research vessel. Sri Lankan scientists and researchers are expected to embark on Shian 6 to conduct surveys of the exclusive economic zone of the island nation and in the South Indian Ocean. The vessel, which is expected to remain till November of this year, is expected to carry out surveys for nearly a month, with one part of surveys being without Sri Lankan scientists. Sri Lanka's Navy, scientists and language translators will be on board when the research is jointly conducted with the Chinese vessel. In other news, Minister of Water Supply Jeevan Thundaman made an assurance today that there would be no water tariff hike by the National Water Supply and Drainage Board. Addressing a media briefing organised by the President's Media Centre, Thundaman said instead of raising water tariffs, a cost recovery tariff formula will be introduced in January of next year as an alternative.
But as all of you are aware, last time when I had a press conference, I made it very clear that along with the ADB consultants and also external consultants, we are working on a water tariff formula that is to come in January. And after the August 2023 water tariff hike, there would not be another water tariff hike which will be put forth to Cabinet, but rather we are working on a cost recovery formula. And that formula is being drafted by the Water Board along with the Asian Development Bank. It's part of our policy-based loan sub-program, which will give us $100 million to the centralized budget upon completion, and post that we have sub-program 2, which will give us another $100 million.
Is the water board making break even now?
Unfortunately not. I mean, earlier when I had taken over in January, there was a 66% increase in the electricity tariff, and out of all our pumping stations, only 2% are covered by renewable energy. The rest 98% are based on electricity. So we were making a loss of close to 425 million rupees a month just on energy cost. And apart from that, we were also making losses of about 2.8 billion rupees on debt component every month. So when this is the case, Water Board, the closest they had come is they had fallen short of 100 million rupees out of their large revenue. But right now we are not breaking even yet, but we are able to sustain. But I think we are on the path to breaking even.
After the revision, what's the loss? Monthly loss?
So after the August 2023 revision, though we have increased it, it will take us 3 months to actually see the finances take impact. So I think it would be around November for us to see the finalized impact, because we do quarterly.
The United States has underscored equal and equitable treatment for all Sri Lankan creditors is essential and paramount in the debt restructuring process. United States Ambassador in Colombo, Julie Chung, stated this during a meeting with the Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, today. During the meeting, the U.S. Ambassador highlighted the need for fairness in the debt restructuring process and pointed out that transparency from every involved party is crucial. The ambassador reassured the US's commitment to an economic landscape that values fairness, transparency, integrity, and inclusivity, ensuring stability and growth in Sri Lanka. The ambassador congratulated the CBSR governor on reaching a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund earlier this month on economic policies to conclude the first review of the 48-month extended funding facility program. Accordingly, Sri Lanka will have access to 254 million special drawing rights with approximately $330 million in financing once the review is approved by the IMF management and IMF executive board. Moving on to other news. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres stated that Israel's attacks on Gaza is a violation of international law and added that the Hamas's attacks on Israel did not happen in a vacuum. However, in response to the statement, Israel called on the United Nations Secretary General to resign from his post, highlighting that his remarks are clearly indicative that he is tolerating terrorism. Further, Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, said that Israel will halt visas for UN officials once over these comments. The Israel-Hamas conflict, which is now in its 19th day, has so far claimed the lives of over 7,000 people, 5,800 of which are estimated to be Palestinians. Over 16,000 Palestinians remain injured. Israel escalated airstrikes across the Gaza Strip as they continue to rout out any possible hidden Hamas cells. The Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, said that Israeli airstrikes killed at least 704 people over the past day, mostly women and children. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency said that relief operations in Gaza may be forced to come to a halt by tonight if no fuel is delivered to the territory. Vital fuel supplies needed to run hospitals, pump and desalinate water, and power bakeries are on the verge of running out, with the main aid agency in Gaza warning that the deep humanitarian crisis is worsening by the hour. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency said that nearly 600,000 internally displaced people are sheltering in 150 facilities of them across Gaza, adding that the shelters are 4 times over their capacity. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, while addressing the UN Security Council, condemned Israel's attacks in Gaza, highlighting them as clear violations of international law.
I'm deeply concerned about the clear violations of international humanitarian law that we are witnessing in Gaza. It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing.
Almost all those killed by Israel are civilians. Over 1 million displaced, 170,000 housing units destroyed. More injustice and more killing will not make Israel safer.
However, the statement of the UN Secretary General came under criticism from the Israeli Foreign Minister.
Hamas are the new Nazis. I hear the call for a ceasefire. Tell me, what is a proportionate response for killing of babies, for rape women and burn them, for beheading of a child? How you can agree to a ceasefire?
Further, Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, said that Israel will halt visas for UN officials following comments made by Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
The UN is failing, and you, Mr. Secretary General, have lost all morality and impartiality. When you say that these heinous attacks did not happen in a vacuum, you are tolerating terrorism, and the SG is blaming the victim. I think that the Secretary General must resign.
Meanwhile, addressing the UN, Sri Lankan Permanent Representative Mohan Piris pledged Sri Lanka's support for a long-lasting solution for the ongoing conflict.
We call on all sides to immediately halt violence and take steps to prevent further civilian casualties. We also call upon the international community to redouble their support to the UN relief. We are committed to support the efforts and activities of the United Nations General Secretary General. We condemn terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. We support diplomatic efforts to find a lasting solution to the conflict and request in a dialogue to achieve durable peace.
In the meantime, the Sri Lankan embassy in Israel performed the final rites for the Sri Lankan woman who died due to the provoked Hamas attacks in a small ceremony today.
The compensation and all the other benefits available for Anula Satnayaka's family, the government will make arrangement as soon as possible to pay the payment after end of the official activities regarding her death. After end of the religious ceremony as well as the last respect by the Sri Lankan community member, the embassy is willing to dispatch the body as soon as possible to Sri Lanka under the available next flight. These days, few flights are coming from Colombo to Israel. I hope whatever the next available flight we will use to dispatch the body to their members of the family.
Sri Lanka's Foreign Employment Minister Manusha Nanayakkara observes that if the current war between Israel and Hamas intensifies, authorities will have to rethink the safety of Sri Lanka's expatriates in Middle Eastern countries in the future. The minister further warned that if the current war escalates, the country stands to relive the hard times as there is a risk of the prices of global commodities increasing.
ඉස්රායලයේ තියෙන තත්ත්වය අපි හැමෝටම උත්තර දෙන්න බැරි ඒත් ඒ වගේම උපකල්පනය කරන්න බැරි ප්‍රෙඩික්ට් කරන්න බැරි තත්ත්වයක් ආහාර හිඟවීම ඇති වෙන්න තෙල් මිලේ වැඩිවීම ඇති වෙන්න විදේශගත ශ්‍රමිකයන්ගේ තියෙන රැකියාවල අවදානම මේ වගේ බරපතල තත්ත්වයක් ඉදිරියේදී නිර්මාණය වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉදිරියේදී එහෙම තත්ත්වයක් නිර්මාණය වුණොත් අපිට අපේ මැද පෙරදිග කලාපයේ ඉන්න සේවකයෝ ඒ කලාපවල සේවය කරනවද අපිට තීන්දුව తీරන ගන්න වෙයි. ඒ හරහා අපේ රටට දැනට හම්බෙන ඩොලර් මිලියන 500ක මුදල එතනින් අහිමි වුණොත් අපි කොහොමද රටක් විදියට තෙල් ටික ගෑස් ටික බෙහෙත් ටික රට ඇතුළට ගේන්නේ රටේ බරපතල ප්‍රශ්න රාශියක් ඉස්සරහට එන්න නියමිතයි මේ යුදමය වාතාවරණය වර්ධනය වීමක් සිද්ධ වුණොත්.
The Irrigation Department said that several low-lying areas in the Nilvala River Basin will continue to be inundated as a result of the prevailing inclement weather. The Department of Meteorology separately forecasted that rains can be expected in several places for the northern and eastern provinces of the island after 1 p.m. Subsequently, the National Building Research Organization issued amber landslide warnings to several areas in 2 districts.
Heavy rains continue in parts of the country, disrupting the livelihoods of the general public. Many areas of Gaul and Mathura districts remain submerged following the rains encountered within the past few days, which have severely affected the southern province. As a result, transportation remains hampered and school children residing in the area are also inconvenienced. Meanwhile, the irrigation department added that the prevailing floods in the low-lying areas of the Nilwala river basin are likely to continue throughout the day. With that, the irrigation department has urged the residents of the Athuraliya, Malimbada, Tihagoda, Kamburupitiya and Mathura Divisional Secretariat divisions to remain vigilant as the said areas are currently at major risk. In the meantime, Vellabaya area also experienced heavy rainfall since yesterday, with nearly 50 houses having reportedly been flooded due to the overflowing of the Kirama reservoir. Concurrently, the three sluice gates of the Murthavela reservoir in Hambantota continued to remain open during the day. As a result, several lowlands and byroads in certain areas including Hakuruvela, Talamporua and Kadiragoda were inundated. Meanwhile, a house in Makola in the Gampaha district was completely destroyed due to the prevailing inclement weather. However, no lives were harmed in the incident. In Bandaravela and Alla tourist areas, measures were taken to remove several trees that had fallen across roads in Alla Karandagulla on the Bandaravela-Vellabaya road. Traffic on Balangoda Hatton Main Road in the Pinnavala area was disrupted due to earth slips reported in the area. The Met Department meanwhile forecasted that rains can be expected in several areas except for northern and eastern provinces of the island after 1 p.m. The department added that fairly heavy rainfall of 50 mm are expected to occur in certain areas of the Sabaragama province and in the Gaul, Mathura and Kaluthara districts. Concurrently, the National Building Research Organisation issued amber landslide warnings to several areas in 2 districts. Accordingly, Level 2 amber warnings were issued to Badulla and Ratnapura districts. Level 1 yellow warnings were issued to Badulla, Gaul, Hambantota, Kaluthara, Kandy, Kegaul, Kurunegala, Mathura, Nuwara and Ratnapura districts.
The corpse of a female was recovered by the Mullayavelli police following a confession made by her husband, who had fled after committing the murder. He was arrested in Velampitiya yesterday. Meanwhile, the police special task force apprehended an individual along with 1 kilogram of crystal methamphetamine worth nearly 20 million rupees. With that, here's a look at more news across the island in brief.
The body of a 23-year-old woman was recovered by the Mullayavelli police buried at her residence in Mullathur. The woman's corpse was located following a confession made by her husband, who was later arrested in Velampitiya yesterday after having committed the murder and subsequently fleeing the area. Further investigations into the murder are being carried out by the Mullayavelli police. Meanwhile, a person has been arrested by the police special task force along with crystal methamphetamine weighing 1 kilogram worth nearly 20 million rupees. The suspect was arrested during a raid conducted in Panadur area. In other news, a suspect with 15 rounds of live ammunition and 9mm firearm suspected to have been stolen from a security department has been taken into custody by the Ingiriya police. Another person in connection to the incident was later apprehended by the police following the questioning of the first suspect. In the meantime, the Sri Lanka Navy arrested the suspect with 288 kilograms of smuggled Kendu leaves during a search operation conducted in Kalpitiya yesterday. The 48-year-old suspect along with the stock of Kendu leaves were handed over to the Kalpitiya police for further investigations.
Welcome back. Sri Lanka's Export Development Board said that earnings from merchandise exports fell by 14.94% in September of 2023 compared to August of 2023. Per provisional data released, merchandise exports earnings in September 2023 recorded a total of $951.5 million. The Export Development Board also said that this is a decline of 11.88% from a year earlier.
Sri Lanka's Export Development Board says that merchandise export earnings in September 2023 recorded a value of $951.5 million, which is a 14.94% decrease from the previous month. This number also is a decline of 11.88% from a year earlier. The decline in merchandise exports is due to the reduced demand shown in export products, especially in apparel and textiles, rubber and rubber-based products, and coconut-based products. For the period of January to September 2023, overall merchandise exports decreased by 10.31% to $8.9 billion compared to the corresponding period in 2022. Further, the EDB mentioned that out of top 10 export markets, India, Italy, the UAE and France have shown strong performances during the month of September 2023 and the period of January to August 2023 compared to the corresponding period in the previous year. Exports to the USA, Sri Lanka's largest export destination, decreased by 26.28% to $202.1 million in September from a year earlier and 19.67% to $2 billion in the period of January to September 2023 compared to the same period in 2022.
The Colombo Stock Exchange closed lower today, driven by the financial and communication services sector. The CSE All-Share Index closed 1.09% lower at 10,614.46 points, while the S&P SL20 was down 1.31% at 2,977.38 points. Sri Lanka Telecom PLC and Commercial Bank of Ceylon PLC were the top losers on the index, down 1.6% and 2.6% respectively. Trading volume on the index rose to 56.9 million shares from 37.7 million shares in the previous session. Equity market turnover fell to 920.3 million rupees from 1.35 billion rupees in the previous session. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to market turnover today, while the diversified financial sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 194.7 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 879.3 million rupees. We now have Yudhishan join us from Capital Alliance with some thoughts on the current status of the economy of the country in our next segment, Sri Lanka's Economic Outlook.
On local economic news this week, we saw market interest rates falling further during the week, particularly with the average weighted prime lending rate falling by 32 basis points to 13.68%. And if you look at the rates, these rates have been continuously coming down, and it's getting closer to the target rate which was anticipated by the central bank for the December quarter. On the treasury bill auctions which concluded today, we saw the 3-month treasury bill rates fall further by 20 basis points to 16.1%, while the 1-year treasury bill rates remain constant at 13%. Also, on an interesting front, we saw foreign holding of treasury bills and treasury bonds increase by about 6.1% during last week, which was an encouraging sign for Sri Lanka to see foreign inflows to the government securities market. However, from a treasury bond perspective, we've seen the long-term treasury bond yields slightly edging up during the week, roughly by 50 basis points on the long tenor, particularly on the 5 to 10-year bond yields. On the inflation front, we feel that the slowdown that was witnessed in terms of inflation over the last couple of months might take a pause, particularly with the increase in terms of electricity tariffs by 18% during the month, and also with global commodity prices increasing, we might see the inflation reduction kind of slowing down going into the December quarter. On a positive note, Sri Lanka received staff level agreement for its IMF second tranche for $330 million. However, IMF highlighted a few corrective measures that Sri Lanka may have to take before they receive board level agreement, which is at the point at which Sri Lanka will receive the $330 million. The key reforms may trend towards increasing government revenue as the government falls short of its target by about 400 to 500 billion in terms of revenue, and the IMF expects Sri Lanka to increase its government revenue to 12% of GDP from roughly about 10% of GDP in the year 2023, which means that Sri Lanka may have to increase its tax revenue by roughly about 700 to 800 billion during 2024. It will be interesting to see what the government of Sri Lanka does to increase its tax revenues given the shortage of about 700 billion, and with tax rates already being high, we feel that the priority may be towards increasing the tax base, where the budget focuses more on methods to increase tax collections rather than increasing the tax rates as such.
Right, with that, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies as the day progressed. Odell, one of the largest fashion retailers and department stores in the country, have announced that the firm will prioritize the production of local and private labels through the Odell apparel manufacturing facility, following the closure of its outlets in the past year to minimize cost. The firm further stated that the growth of the tourism sector is an optimistic sign, as the firm's airport outlet during the year doubled its sales. With that, let's take a look at the corporate news for the day. Sri Lanka's Odell have stated that in order to refine and optimize its operations, Odell plc made strategic decisions to discontinue activities in 7 non-strategic or loss-making locations and brands, with the Nugegoda department store being transformed into an outlet, enabling the firm to cater to the mass market while reducing inventory holding costs. In its annual report, the firm said that its airport outlet during the year doubled its sales value, and the tourist-centric brand Love SL recorded a growth of 86% in the year. In the short to medium term, the firm will prioritize the production of local and private labels through the Odell apparel manufacturing facility. In other news, Sailor Safety, a South Korean glove manufacturing company, opened the latest venture of its subsidiary Sailor Safety Robotics Private Limited in Sri Lanka. Through this venture, Sailor Safety expects to bridge global and local strengths, contributing to the growth of the Sri Lankan economy while delivering machinery and high-quality gloves to meet international demands. The company already established its presence in Pakistan and will provide its machinery to Southeast Asian countries and to the European market. The United States, through the U.S. Agency for International Development's Ocean Plastic Reduction Activity and Gunathamin Elephant House of Ceylon Cold Stores plc, have signed a memorandum of understanding with the aim to establish a women-led plastic recyclable collection network and material recovery facility. Initially launched in Dikwella, Matara, this partnership, supported by Sobakanta Environmental Management and Community Development Foundation and Viridis Private Limited, has gathered 1,175 kilograms of plastic waste. The goal is to broaden the initiative's scope across 5 coastal provinces, partnering with grassroots women's organizations with the aim to identify and empower economically disadvantaged women from fishing communities, transforming them into active plastic collectors and environmental stewards. Welcome back. Some very good news right now, as Sri Lanka has won 2 silver medals and 2 bronze medals at the Asian Paralympic Games in China. Samita Dulan Kodituaku, who competed in the men's javelin throw F64 event, won the silver medal with a throw of 64.09 meters. Janani Jaya meanwhile bagged the silver medal in the women's long jump T47 event, while Kumudu Disanayaka claimed the bronze of the same event. Meanwhile, Palitha Bandara placed 3rd to win the bronze medal in the men's shot put F63 event. Sri Lanka is placed 14th in the medal tally of the Asian Para Games after claiming 2 golds, silver and bronze medals each. That's all the news I have for you for this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. This is Jonathan Benedict signing off. Have a blessed night and a very good Thursday ahead. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.